nice to see everyone. We have a great crowd. This is Barbie's second.
Second. Mm-hmm.
You're in good hands. Bobby's here. She's our little resident liaison for. So if you need something during the presentation or whatever, you can reach out to her. Otherwise, Stow TV's taping, and there's some snacks back there, and I hope you enjoy it. So thanks.
Thank you.
If you haven't, Pat's a previous presenter. So if anybody's wants to present or has people they think might want, definitely reach out. We do it every month. We're full through the end of the year, but we're ready for more people all the time.
Thank you, Gigi.
Thank you.
So welcome. And my first question is, I always like to make sure everybody feels comfortable. If you have a question, you want to ask me something or tell me something as we go along, please feel free. There's no waiting till the end or anything. Secondly, I would like to know how many here have been to France? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 9. So you know a little bit or maybe a lot about France, and you will probably recognize some of the things I'm going to show you and tell you. Anybody ever been on the Canal du Midi? This is a self-driven kind of thing where you get your own barge and then you just float along down the river. It's absolutely a delightful trip. It was lasted for a week. So I'll take you through what we did. You don't have to be a boater or a sailor to know how to drive these boats. It's just absolutely terrifically fun. So this is what we traveled in. It's called a penichette, and I called it a barge. It's like driving a big bathtub. It's got rubber all around it, and sometimes we would put out the little bumpers because we would dock once in a while, and but it was, you could somehow you travel along and maybe float into the side of the canal and you just bounce out away from it, so it was no problem. It's just, as I say, like driving a big bathtub.
You by yourself?
No, I went with crew, my husband and friends. Yeah, it's advisable to go with perhaps 3 people because you need crew to jump out of the boat and line it up for the locks. We went through a lot of locks, and yeah, you stop and you wait and the gates open and you go in, and yeah, you need somebody up there to catch the ropes and so on. So we had, this one was 5 of us. So anyway, this is where is the Canal du Midi, and you can see it's southern France. It's foothills of the Pyrenees, which makes it kind of interesting because the route does take you up and down, and hence the need for the locks. They close, the water rushes in, you rise, or you go down, depending. You could go from the Mediterranean west, or you can go from Toulouse east. And so it depends on which way you're going, but the locks will handle you either way. Individual, one, you wouldn't have people passing each other, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so that's where we were. And the reason they built the lock was, the canal was to ease the transport of goods to the Mediterranean Sea. So you can see the boats usually, or the produce or the product, had to go all the way around Spain to get to the Mediterranean. So in most cases, so they built the canal to make it easier to get things into the Mediterranean easily. And of course, wine would have been one of the big ones.
From river to river, can bigger do this bigger.
I wish I could make it bigger. I cannot. What were you interested in seeing?
Sea river, from river to river, the channel.
Yeah. Well, the canal actually made use of existing rivers and lakes as it was able to, but they had to dig a lot also to make it work. Mm-hmm. Sure. So on the left, your left your right is King Louis. This is the thing that kills me. Just blew my mind. Louis XIV, notice his dates of living. The canal was built in 1681. It opened. If you can imagine the engineering feat way back in the 17th century, I just find it amazing. And the Baron Riquet de Bonrepas was a tax collector in the court of the king, and he, with his advisors and other people, developed a plan that took them 9 years to build the thing, dig it out, make sure that they had everything running. But he is regarded as the master engineer of the canal. So I put in the date of the Erie Canal to give you a little bit of context. That, of course, we were a young country and probably were not developed enough to even need a canal in the 17th. Let me see. Yeah, hand shovel. They did not have the equipment that we have right now.
Very long and very deep and wide.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's quite amazing. 12,000 workers were at its peak. Today, along the canal, there are 63 locks. We didn't go through all 63. I would say we went through about 35, maybe. It is a World Heritage Site, UNESCO World Heritage Site. So they called it, and today they do call it an engineering marvel. Later on, they built another canal called the Canal du Garonne, and you can see that is even closer to the Atlantic Ocean, so they were designed to connect each other so that theoretically one could take a ship, not a ship, but a barge. We're talking about a barge. A barge, by the way, that was pulled by mules or horses by ropes along each side to transport goods down to the Mediterranean.
excellent. They from sea to sea can come.
Yes.
Ship can go.
Well, no, not a ship. No, this is a very small, very narrow passage, but it was good enough.
Can go.
Hmm?
Boats can go.
Oh, yes.
Boats.
Mm-hmm.
Small boats.
Yeah, small. Yeah. Mhm.
No, it's a good idea.
Yeah. And notice the draft was only 4.9 feet, almost 5 feet. So it's not deep. You don't have boats with deep keels going on this canal. They're and it's very narrow. And I think this is interesting. I talked about the foothills of the Pyrenees. So at the summit of the part that we're talking about, the Midi part, the highest point would be the boats would be lifted up to 206 feet above sea level, and then it descends from the summit down 620 feet going east.
Which was the first canal?
Hmm?
Which was the first canal?
I don't know, but the blue one is the one that we went on, was the first one. But they had smaller canals too, and then the green came about a century later. Yeah. There was one other thing I was going to say, but anyway. Oh yeah, we have actually taken we've done this 3 times. Not all on the Canal du Midi. We did the Garonne, and then we went the other way. You can't do the whole Midi in one fell swoop. We had a week to do it, so we were sort of halfway into the canal when we started to go toward Sète, which was the last place we were. But we've done it before and had a wonderful cassoulet in Carcassonne, the real thing. Oh, it was very good. Okay, so in 2008, we get on a plane, we fly to Paris, and we did the sights. Those of you who've been to France will recognize those, and even those who haven't been to France will probably recognize some of these wonderful sights that we saw. So I'm not going to go into that, but you can see we had a good time. Remember how many days we were there?
At the museum?
We went to some museums. We went, to all the famous spots. And here we are, our last meal in a little outdoor cafe before we went down to southern France. We went on a high-speed rail. Has anybody been on one? Anywhere? Yeah, a few people here. You know what they're like then. They're very fast, almost scary when you're sitting there looking out the window. But it was kind of interesting because we were met at every open door to get on. There would be a uniformed person, almost like a very elegant airline. You know, you're getting on. They're saying, "Hello, how are you?" You know, we say, "Take you to your seat." And the food was delicious. We only went halfway down France until we had to change to a smaller train. And I think we may have even gone to a small train and then maybe even a bus to get to where we were going to get. So here's a little bit more information about the Penichette that we were on. The one we chose to go on was 35 feet long. It had 4 staterooms and each, well, one had 2 helms, so you could drive it from the top, the rooftop, or you could drive it inside. There's a boarding plank so that when you went to, let's say, you know, the side there, you did have to put the plank so you could disembark and then drive in the stakes with a mallet, and then you would take the rope and tie the boat to the land, and you could go ashore and you'd walk around, go to little towns. So it was really quite fun. Well, they gave us an itinerary too, which worked very well. We could, we had to do a certain amount of travel every day to make our final destination. So, but it was extremely leisurely. The maximum speed these boats go is 6 knots, 6 miles an hour. So often we were not going that fast, but we just did have to cover, we'd have to sail about 2 to 3 hours every day, go about 14 miles each day. Very leisurely. Whoops. That's just another shot of the galley indoors, and that's one of the helms. So as I say, it was really fun to sit on top and drive it. Everybody wanted to drive. We had to take turns. It was so much fun. So Omp, however you pronounce it, France was this tiny little town, which is where we started. Yes?
Question, any instructions on driving, and is there any right of way? Is somebody coming the wrong way, for example?
You know, they may have done so. There was traffic. There were other barges. I think you kept to the right. You always, and you never had instances where you would try to pass another Penichette. You weren't, you know, in a speed situation. But yeah, we had instructions on how to drive it. Yeah, it was, if you could drive a car, you could drive this. It was so simple.
Did you stay on the boat?
Yes, we slept in, each of us had a stateroom. Very comfortable. Yep. So yeah, this little town, and we will find that along the way, all the little towns we came to were formerly Roman little towns. They were, or even pre-Roman little towns. That this was a very popular road going to the Mediterranean in southern France. And of course, it's big on wine country, as I think all of France seems to be. Yeah. Oops, I'm killing my head. This was one of the earliest parts of the trip. We went through a lot of scenes just like this under the plane trees, this canopy. So you just imagine you're floating down. There's no iPhone, there's no television, there's no radio. It's just drifting along, and we had beautiful weather. We went in September, absolutely gorgeous weather, and it was one of the most relaxing times I've ever had in my life. The plane trees were, apparently, I read this, I didn't realize it at the time, were attacked by a fungus, but they have replaced them with even more than were originally planted. And one of the values of the plane trees is the roots help to keep the banks from crumbling in. These are for the most part earthen. They're not paved. And the water is still water, so you're just chugging through on your own. There's no current or anything. Yeah. So the first little town we came to was Argent, And there was a little cathedral there. Again, extremely old, 12th century. And I found it interesting here because it was a stopover for the pilgrims who were going to Santiago de Compostela. Who knows what that's all about? Aha. Tell us.
I'm sorry, I might be mixing it up, but is it not the one that people walk long journey on?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Santiago is in Spain. And does anybody know a translation of Santiago? San Diego, Saint James. And the myth is, or perhaps it's real, that Saint James traveled to Spain and died there. And the cathedral in Santiago, which is a little town in northwestern Spain, has the bones of Saint James. So it was considered a holy trek to leave Paris and walk the whole way. And on the way, they would stop in Argent, so it was really one of the stopover points. I've been to Santiago de Compostela. There's a big university there, but it's otherwise a very small sort of medieval town. Yeah. Okay. So another town we came to, Colombier, and usually we would stop at the town. We'd go in to buy some supplies or just look around. We would usually have breakfast and lunch aboard, but then we would go out for dinner every night. And strangely enough, these little towns had the most magnificent little restaurants, maybe no bigger than this room, but there you'd get the classic French cuisine. It was terrific. Okay, another little town. I was just fascinated by the antiquity of these little towns, and I took that picture. I have no idea how far it dates, but it looks pretty old, right? Oh, I keep going too fast. We did pass one field of a huge field. I could hardly see the end of it, of sunflowers. It's a crop that they use for making sunflower oil. And then just pretty poppies along the side. Am I entrancing you yet? Because it was really quite nice. So then we came to our first lock. There's one that just shows us in the lock tying up to the bollard. What you would do, you would not actually tie it, you would hang on to it, and then the boat was going to either rise or descend, and you had to just kind of manage that, keep the boats from bumping into other boats. You could be alone in a lock, or there could be several other boats with you. And I have one crew had to get off and go up to the lock while the others were driving it in, and then throw the ropes and, secure it that way.
So there must have been ladders or something on the side where you could slow down and step out.
No, you'd have to drive to a bank and then put the plank out, and one person would run off, and then we'd bring in the plank and then get ready while the person went up to there was always a pathway up, no ladder or anything, just a way up. It was graded. I have lots of pictures of locks, so I just found them fascinating. There we are in one. We're in one. And you just want to make sure you're not bumping into another penichette.
Is this rush hour?
It's funny. Sometimes you'd get there and there would be several boats waiting to get in, because you'd see the entrance to the lock, and the gate would either be closed or open. If it was open, you could just sail right in, or you let your person out and then sail in. But if it was closed, you had to wait. That meant that boats were coming from the other direction. So we would wait, we would line up, and people were very polite. Although once there was a great big tourist barge, and they went straight ahead. I was first to get in, and he went right by me and scooted right in. And I said, "Wait a minute," in my best French anger words, that he paid no attention to me. I made it anyway. We made it anyway. Rude.
Did you have a crank on the boat to operate the lock?
No. These are all
Man,
They originally they were mechanical and wheels. The lock keepers would turn the wheels to open and close the gates. So we had nothing to do with that.
Or
It-
lock keepers.
There were lock keepers. Yes, yes. Yeah, it's not like our garage door opener or anything. Yeah, we had to. In fact, we sometimes had to. There were a few locks along the way that were not as big as this one, where we would have to get out of the boat and open up ourselves manually and then close them when we went through. Oh, it was all fun. Here's more about the locks. They are maintained by the French government. A lot of people take care of them. The lock keepers' houses originally were intended for the relatives of Riquet, Baron de Riquet. Today, they are apparently handed down the houses to the generations who want to maintain the locks. We had keepers like a young boy, maybe 19, by himself, or then other cases there would be a whole family. Each of the houses would have land behind it. They would grow things. So it was a regular living area. Yeah, and then they clean the canal in the winter months. They closed down the locks in the winter.
was there a fee?
No,
Had to pay?
no, no. So I've already talked about the locks, and so where we were, we probably went through about 30 locks. And a big barge can go, as it says, they're 124 feet. And just a note about the towpaths. There's one on the right-hand side you can see. The locks are on both sides of the canal are towpaths where the mules and the horses were pulling the lock back and forth. So you had to be careful if you stopped somewhere along and there's the towpath, but you let's say you're driving the stake in the ground to tie up, you had to make sure not to cross the path, because bicyclists would be coming along, or tractors, or you just didn't want to be a hindrance. More locks. So the process, I kind of went through it. You would stop ahead of time. Sometimes we'd have to wait for a long time. Every day from 12 to 1, they closed the locks so the lock keepers could have their lunch. And once in a while you'd get stuck in the lock when they would close and not open. So, but it really wasn't bad, because we would say, okay, we'll have our lunch. And those were times when we would actually get to know the lock keeper. Often we would invite him or her on board, and they'd have lunch with us. And of course, our terrible French and their non-existent or terrible English. But we all managed to really enjoy each other, and that happened many times. So as I say, here's a crew member getting up there ready to, the boat will be coming through. That's my husband. He would be ready to catch the rope that you'd fling as you come in, and then he would tie it around the bollard, or not tie it, but loop it around so that you could manage. And you had to be careful, because if you forgot what you were doing, and let's say the water's going down and you're hanging on too tight, the boat could be tipping and stuck to the edge. So you had to be really careful. Here's one where I think it was like a little drawbridge. We had to get out of the boat and go raise it. Another picture. And I was interested in see how deep it is. Sometimes we would go way down 7 to 10 feet, depending, or we might be lifted that amount of length. So it was always an adventure to go into a lock. There's one where users had to open them up. We did too. That's a different picture.
That's when you had to do yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did they have interlocks on the gates so you couldn't open up the second one?
Well, they were, you didn't pay anything. I'm trying to remember. I don't think we ever had to hand crank any. I know in the old days that's what they had to do. I think they are all electrified now, so we would just get up there and push a button or something.
There must be an interlock, so you can't open it before the other one's closed.
Well, no,
You can't have two gates open at the same time.
No, but the water level has to be the same.
the water level, yeah, so,
You
yeah,
can't open
That's why,
Well,
there must be some way of keeping it from,
Yeah,
He-
they must
there must be a sensor someplace.
that maybe, I really don't know. But yeah, as Charlie says, you had to wait until the water became level with the water that you were heading into before you could open.
Thing where you have a gatekeeper, but something else where you have amateurs.
But you.
Yes, I know, but you really can't, you wouldn't, if the pressure would be such that you wouldn't be able to open the gate. It would have to be the same level.
Moscow say.
Or locks, I just find them very interesting. The one on the right is the more typical. I don't know why they had that sort of oval shape, but that's kind of why it was. And it gives you a good view of the gates. They always opened inward. But as I say, you had to wait. So let's say this one would be rising, the water would be rushing in, and you had to wait until it was equal to level with what you were going into. But there was never any problem. It worked. And I just wanted to point out the bollard, and there we were just tied up somewhere, probably a little town. This is leaving a lock, and this would be very typical. We'd leave the lock and go into some really pretty, picturesque little view, some little town. More locks. You can see I was kind of fascinated. Here's the lock keeper's house. One of them. I talked about the generations owning them. One time we were stuck in the lock at noontime, and the keeper came out and said, "Help yourself to the figs in the backyard." So we got off and went and picked some figs from the fig tree. Another time, a lock keeper came out to us and said he had just baked an apple tart. Would we like to buy it? And we did, 12 euros. It was delicious, huge. It was a huge thing. And I said, "Well, did your wife bake it?" Sexist that I am. He said, "No, I baked it." So, yeah, that was fun. There's another lock keeper's house. Another one. Yep. I don't know how that dog got up there, but another one. So they were substantial houses, they weren't just shacks or, little places. So, as I mentioned, we had the most delightful food. Every night we did eat out, almost every night, and everybody had creme brulee for dessert every single night. We would have these little restaurants about this big, with maybe 5 or 6 tables. And they would serve the most delicious French cooking, stews, beef bourguignon and whatever you want. My favorite was foie gras, goose liver. They served it. You could get a whole goose liver and they would fry it up and you'd eat it. My heart has never recovered, but. And the story of Anna, one time we were in a little restaurant like that and it was her birthday. So we had asked the waiter to bring us a little special dessert at the end with a little candle, and they said, sure. So they did. We'd had our wonderful meal. They brought and in comes the dessert, and we all start singing happy birthday. Well, the other people in the restaurant all joined in. They were singing in English. They knew the tune, and everybody's singing happy birthday, dear Anna. And at the end, one of them said, speech, speech. And Anna, who was quick on her feet, I could not have known what to say, but she did stand up and she thought for a minute and she said, "Vive la France." And they cheered and everybody clapped. So that was one of our good evenings. Yeah. That's I'm pretty sure that's a foie gras. That thing, I think it's just a pineapple top, but I just thought the was pretty. Yeah. This looks like a dessert where you had to sort of make it yourself kind of thing. But, you know, it's flair, right? More food.
Okay.
We just ate like kings. And of course, the desserts were amazing. More food. And wine. Don't forget the wine. There's an apple tart. Yeah, yeah. And then we would do a grocery run once in a while. A couple of times, I think, we would run out of milk or something, and we'd go in. And, of course, come back with the pastries. Yes, of course. So, again, I just wanted to show you this again. Look how deep it is, so you can see, you can imagine it could be 10 feet, the bottom of the barge. But, you know, just all worked very well. And then you'd leave the lock and come into some pretty little site like that. So you can see how narrow the locks are keep saying that, canal. Yeah, the canal curves around there, and as you can see, it's not wide. So once in a while, the wind might blow you into the side if you're not, you know, navigating correctly. But as I say, you just bounce off and nothing was damaged. And so once in a while, we had to back up, and I can't remember why or when, but it worked out. So these are the wines from the region. Are you familiar with any of those? I had heard of the Languedoc, both white and red wines. But you can see all the red places are where there are wineries or wine growing areas. And that's where the Midi, the canal, went right along. And you see it's getting close to the Mediterranean as we approached across southern France. Okay, tractor story again. We're driving along again, and we were in September, which is harvest time. So there was this most delicious aroma in the air of grapes and wine. And one time we saw a guy driving this little tractor and hauling an enormous cart full of grapes. And he was heading for one of the distilleries that was on the way. But I remember the smell in the air. It was really quite fun, quite nice. So then here's another little town we came to, very small, but look at how big their church is. Again, oh yeah, this one there was a wine cellar we wanted to tour, so we went ashore. And we met the owners of the wine cellar, and we bought some bottles, and they were so kind and just fun to be with. We invited them back to the boat for dinner, and they came. And that night we ate aboard, and once again, the French and the English was, you know, all fractured, but it worked. You know, language, I've read that the verbal language is really only 10% of real communication. All the rest is body language and gestures and facial expression. So it really didn't bother us or them. And there's Virginia in the wine cellar. Yes, it was. More pretty pictures. You know, I just had some of these. I can't identify where these were, but this shows some of these very old little towns. Then we came to Béziers, which is the birthplace of the Baron de Riquet. And they do have a statue of him, the creator of the Canal du Midi. So they have a statue commemorating him in the main plaza. And it's kind of an interesting town. They're not all small towns, but none is very big either. There's a cathedral. Yeah, it's really quite amazing. Beautiful, Romanesque, you know, all the grandeur of these old cathedrals. This was probably one of the most interesting places we went. This is the Orb. That's the Orb River, and they had to get the boats across these rivers, so they actually built this aqueduct. This one came in 1858, and there were several built like that to allow these canals to go across the river. Just fascinating to me to be driving along and then looking over and seeing a river below. But it was a lot of fun. Uh-huh. Well, possibly, yeah.
Nowadays it'll take 30.
Yeah. Yeah. And more, these are interesting, look like Brahmin cattle along the way, and just pretty pictures. We would also run into these old abandoned buildings. Again, who knows how old they were. I just took this picture of one. I don't know if it was a house or a church, but I just thought it was interesting. You were really back in time in some ways when you were on this trip. You just did not see skyscrapers or electronics, you know, you really were, and which was very nice. More pretty pictures. Yeah, we're really quite fun. There's Colombier, another town we came to. That one's a bigger town. Again, it was founded, this particular town they know, in 410 AD. So it survived the Romans and maybe the Visigoths, and, you know, whoever came through. Yeah. Very, very, very old. I had a lot of pictures from some of the churches and cathedrals. And unfortunately, they didn't have a date that would allow me to arrange them chronologically. So I just put some together here. So you could forgive me. I cannot identify any of these, but I did take some pictures. Probably some of you have seen the interiors of some of these amazing old cathedrals and churches. I'm sure you have if you've been to Mexico or South America or New York City for all that, or even probably Boston. But the really ancient ones, you know, the Romanesque ones are just quite amazing. How they did it, you know, they didn't have cranes, but they somehow managed. Flying buttresses, great archways, just absolutely gorgeous. Stained glass windows. And then outside, I liked, you know, they would have, you know, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but, you know, in the Middle Ages, not everybody could read. So they did a lot of decorative pictures outside the cathedral to tell a story or depict a saint or something, or just in the right-hand side is a little devil. And there's a goat is supposed to be an evil thing. And these were just, there's no translating them. They just attracted me.
Interesting.
Yeah, kind of fun. Well, then all of a sudden we came to an open place, which was an actual lake. And we did have instructions to drive across the lake. Luckily, it wasn't a very windy day, because the slightest amount of wind would drive these boats. You could hardly manage them, actually, because there's no keel. So you would be driving along, all of a sudden you're going this way instead of that way. And that actually happened in the canal. Sometimes we would sort of be bumped against some trees that were hanging over, and it would get all messed up, and then we'd have to somehow get ourselves out from under the trees. Anyway, so it's called an etang. The Capistang is the name of a little town. We had to cross the etang, and it's just a shallow lake, and we found another route to continue. Again, pretty pictures along the way. Yeah, just so peaceful. And I think it was a good thing, because any of you here are boaters. If you're a boater, you would know there's a saying that if you're on a cruise in a, you know, let's say a 30-foot boat or something, that every day you're on the cruise, it shrinks by a foot. And so by the end, yeah, the boat does, because you're still with the same people for one whole week, you know. So it's a good thing it was very relaxing, because even your best friends, you know, could get on your nerves. Anyway, they didn't. They really didn't, but you have to be careful who you travel with. So here we are, that map again. I just wanted to show you, we're heading now, you see Béziers, we've passed Béziers, we're going towards Sète, and I'll tell you the beach story. So notice that between Béziers and Sète, the canal goes literally right next to the Mediterranean Sea. So we would be traveling along, there's a little strip of land, and then there's a beach and the Mediterranean. I mean, so at one point we said, oh, let's stop, and some of us got out to go to the beach. So actually, Virginia and I decided to go. So we get over to the beach, we put down our blanket, we look around, it's a nude beach. And there was a family there with little kids playing in the water. There were some men standing up, looking around, you know, looking for a partner. And we sat down there and we thought, well, you know, what do we do now? And I took off my clothes. I said, you know, I don't want to pass this up to see what it's like. And so I did. And while Virginia, fully clothed with a great big hat, she went around looking for shells. Didn't bother her. You know, somehow if you're among all the nude people, you feel funny with clothes on. So anyway, it was kind of fun. But all right, so then we're getting close to the end. Again, back into the canal, and you can see that's about the typical width. Pretty. Oh, along the way, we must have stopped at some baronial estate or something and had a tour. So I just thought that maze was kind of fun. Took a picture of it. Agde is toward the end. It could be the last of the locks on the Canal du Midi. The town is big, but it's unique for its round lock, and you can see now very close up what the gates look like. Very old, again, very old town, and this would be the last lock to get to the Mediterranean. So after you went through this lock, you would travel a little bit further and get to the Mediterranean, which we did not do. Oh yeah, we went to one more little town. Nothing particularly interesting about it, but it was, it's a tourist place. People come from nearby and just as a little getaway weekend place. And they did have a bookshop in a former wine cellar, which we did see. More pictures. I didn't really know where to put them. I think I just threw them in here. And yeah, so this is probably the most famous place on the Canal du Midi, because it had originally 9 different locks to pass through one after another to elevate the boat up to the point where you needed to get, or lower it, depending. Let's say, I would guess that the top one, they're going toward the Mediterranean, so they have to lower the boat to get it down to sea level. So we went through it, and it took about 2 hours, because each time you go into one, they have to close the gates, make sure everybody's safe, let the water in or out. Then when it's all set, then you're at the level of the next one, open the one gate, you go through that, they close that gate, let more water in, if you're going up, or depending on whether you're going up or down. So, and I wanted to quote what I read in my research, a little bit of the history of the locks, that it was designed by 2 illiterate brothers, but the women did all of the work. Do we need, oh, thank you.
Have to breathe.
So I thought, what a task for those women. But hey, we're just as good as men, aren't we? So, no problem. Oh yeah, the other thing we did along the way was we took bikes. We had 2 bikes, so along the way we could stop and ride along one of the towpaths. And you could go faster than the boat, so you could drive ahead and get away from all those people and say, I'm free, and bicycle along, and it was a lot of fun. So here's a shot of Martin and one of our friends going along the towpath, and I would have taken that from the boat. And there's one of just Martin alone. And there's me. I got out way back where the arrow is, and then I bicycled up to this point where I'm taking a picture of the boat, and I watched it coming toward me, came up past me, hi everybody, kept on going, and then I just got on the bike again and traveled along, and we met up further down the canal. So here's one of the bigger towns and bigger bridges. And I don't know where this was, just threw it in. So our final stop, we did have to turn the boat away from the canal and go into a little special little passageway to the drop-off point. It was a sad day. We managed to have one more meal outside in a cafe before we had to go back to Paris. So then we got on a little train, or maybe we took a taxi to a little train, took the little train to the fast train, the bullet train, and then we went back to Paris, got on another plane, flew back to the United States, and it was over. Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Yeah,
I just have a question. I probably missed this. What year did you do?
we went in 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
So that's way before the pandemic.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And then the second question I had was, did you take out insurance when you got on that boat, or did they just wait?
Probably there would have been, formal insurance against damage to the boat, sure. I'm sure there was some kind of, yes, I'm sure of that. Although you couldn't do much to hurt it, but you could get blown into. There would be trees on the side sometimes, and we'd get blown around, and you couldn't control it sometimes, and it might, scrape along the side or something, but we didn't really have much problem with it.
How did you first learn about the canals in France?
Friends. I think probably from all the people we were with were boaters, sailors, and I think that was kind of an attraction to be on the water, although you did not have to be a sailor to drive along there. I mean, you didn't at all. But I think that's how we learned about it. And we loved it so much that we went back 2 more times for one different part of the Midi, and then another one we went different wine country. We drove our own barge again. It was just such a pleasure to do. So, yeah, Phil.
Tell us about the stateroom.
Well, it was big enough for a double bed. Let's see. Some luggage area. They were small. You were cramped. I don't.
Did you have a window?
No. It was below decks. No windows. Yeah. And you had a question?
What were the temperatures?
Well, we were in September. It was absolutely gorgeous weather. I must say, 70, 75. Just absolutely delightful. It never rained. We lucked out. Yeah, I'm telling you, you all got to go sign up to it. Yeah.
One of the towns that you went through was called Samal.
Sommeil.
Samal.
Mm-hmm.
But it looked like the beginning part of the word sommelier.
Maybe.
I mean, I just thought maybe that's where that.
That's an interesting observation. Could be something to Google.
Wondering, yeah.
Hi.
They say about barging is the fastest way to slow down.
Yes, I think that's very true. Yeah, we did really appreciate that, and I would recommend it highly. I mean, I think even kids would enjoy it, teenagers. I don't know about little kids, they might get bored, but there's a lot of activity, and you're getting out and you're walking around and you're seeing new sights. Yeah, it's just very interesting. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just do it. Oh, what was it? What?